Hello, everyone. My name is Paul, and welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone is having a great day. I hope that your family is safe, that you're safe, that your friends are safe, and I hope that you guys are ready to roll into the weekend. I know it's been a long week for me. I'm sure it's been a long week for a lot of other people. Most of the people here on the staff team do either go to school or they are working full time, and so we're all pretty busy, of course, throughout the day. But nonetheless, we do keep up with what's going on. And so today we have a lot of news coming out for both Ukraine and for the world. And hopefully we start to see some really productive developments for Ukraine. And we have a couple today that might start to lean into that. And something else, of course, check out below in the description, because on every single stream, in every single video, we're going to have donation links. All of these have been vetted by us. We made sure that we try to make sure that the majority of your money is going to where it is supposed to, which is to help people. So most of those links are 80% or more for every US dollar donated actually goes to their programs. There's a lot for Ukraine, both the war effort and the humanitarian efforts there. And those are supporting both Poland, Romania, Ukraine itself, and they could really use your help. Of course, they're going through this ongoing war, and the renewed front in the Donbass and in the east and in the south has really put even more strains. It's now created a new influx of people that need that humanitarian aid on top of those that were already affected by the war. But while Ukraine is going on, we can't forget the other millions of people throughout the world who also need our help. Places like the Tigray region in Ethiopia, places like Somalia, which is going through a horrendous drought. And both of those places, both Tigray in Ethiopia and in Somalia, children under the age of 5 are going to be the most heavily affected. And so we can't forget about that, as well as Southeastern Asia, Thailand, the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia. Those places were hit by a massive typhoon, Super Typhoon Rai, and they're going through recovery efforts. Once again, we're also looking for some community help to help us find something that's credible for South Africa, for those that were impacted in the Durban area of South Africa when those torrential floods came through, and it ended up killing, I believe, 431 people, if I remember correctly, and displaced thousands more. So if you can help us with that, that'd be we would be very grateful for that. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and move on into the news. And so, of course, we got to start our day off with a little bit of Patron. And today we were finding out, and we would really love to find out the actual TikTok for this. Patron officially has a TikTok, so let's go ahead and take a look here. Patron, for those that don't know, his name in English is Cartridge, and he's a bomb-sniffing dog. He's absolutely adorable. He's this tiny little good boy, and he has found between Chernihiv and the Kyiv areas over 300 pieces of unexploded ordnance. So let's go ahead and take a look here.
Патроша, рой, рой. Молодец, Патроша, молодец. Хорошую яму выкопал.
So that cutaway was 2 hours later. So for a bomb-sniffing dog to be digging, that's that's pretty realistic. And as we move further south, though, the news gets less uplifting. And that's because Kharkiv is reportedly under extremely heavy shelling currently. This isn't something we can confirm at this time, but with the extent of it, we don't know the damage or the casualties currently. That's going to be something that will come up, in the coming days and weeks as rescue workers are able to actually get to those areas and do both, rescue individuals that need the help and also conduct body recovery and inspection. So let's take a look here. We have a couple of things regarding this. You can see that orange glow in the sky, telltale sign of what's going on. Large fires that are lighting up the sky there. So it looks like we have a video here.
Просто пизда, что здесь?
Specifically with this, they were saying that there were very large explosions in the city. Kharkiv currently is under continuous bombardment, and this is something that's come from the mayor's office there in Kharkiv, that the city itself is under continuous bombardment and rocket attacks. It's been ongoing for the duration of the war, but it seems to have increased with this renewed offensive. However, in the Kharkiv region, reportedly Ukrainian troops are pushing back. We've heard this from multiple sources, that Ukrainian troops are actually pushing the Russians back in this region. And we've actually went ahead and we went through with this here on this battle line, on this front line, and we've kind of pushed it back. Originally, we did have a lot closer right up against the city where those front lines were originally. As we move further south, we get into the news that leads to the topic today, and that is the fact that Russian forces have apparently stalled along the IZYUM axis of advance. Now, the head of the Russian armed forces has reportedly been put in charge, or has put himself in charge personally, of overseeing the troops in this region, probably to avoid this very thing. And reportedly, they're either rotating their troops out, which we haven't seen them do this entire war, or they're waiting for additional troops to come in so they can renew that offensive. We do know that there's been heavy fighting within this region. The Institute for the Study of War, of course, and the UA Live Map, who have been keeping track of this war, we've kind of cut it down the middle as to what is controlled and what is not. We do know that they've created some bulges here. We'll also get into some what appears to be some further advances that Russian forces have taken. But in the Battle of the Donbass, it is very much a give and take. Russians took control of a city up here, Crimea, where down further south, Marinka was taken by Ukrainian forces in the same day. So it's an act, react, and then react to that reaction. They're countering each other, trying to encircle each other and destroy each other. And they are going very much blow for blow throughout this entire battle. Despite numerical superiority, Ukrainian forces are making up for it with tactical know-how and better command control structures. And obviously they have the home advantage. They know the terrain better than the Russians do. So they're able to more effectively employ, and the amount of support they're getting from the West is immense, and they're getting more and more updated systems to the point where Ukraine is going to the point where they're starting to move away from Soviet stockpiles, which is what they were mainly using at the beginning of the war, and moving more and more towards being a mostly NATO armed country. They're going to be very much dependent on NATO supply, including things like the 155 M777s. So, very important, very good to hear that they have stalled, and hopefully this will allow some breathing room here in the IZYUM front to allow Ukrainian troops to conduct a counteroffensive and retake some of this area. And we do have a video for this.
Кажуть, вас може привітати, да? З гарним попаданням.
Now I'm going to stop it here because I've talked about this before a little bit, and this is what you would call a saturation bombardment. Now, I've talked about it before when we've talked about grad systems and why they're not a precision weapon, and the destruction in Mariupol and why it's that bad. And this right here is the reason why. The purpose of the Grad, which fires Katyusha rockets, is basically the exact same thing that was used in places like the Battle of Stalingrad, except the rockets have gotten a little bit bigger, and the tubes are mounted on a different truck. They're on a newer truck. That's the difference. The basic principle that makes this weapon system, the BM-21 Grad, is exactly the same. And the way it works is it fires a ton of ordnance into an area, a ton of rockets, and they explode over an area, and it saturates it, meaning it completely covers that area with explosives and shrapnel. And that is how this works. And this kind of effect that you see here in a big, nice open field, it's easy to view, is being used in cities. Places like Mariupol, places like Kharkiv. That is this effect is being put into urban areas, and that is why the atrocities are so great when it comes in the destruction of those cities is so immense. Because it's not precision weapons like you saw during the 20 years of war in places like Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan. It's old, it's very old-fashioned, it's very a 20th century style fighting. So that's all I wanted, because I've talked about it before, and I wanted to be able to visualize it here on the channel as well. And as we move further south, so something that we did change is we did change that there is no pocket here anymore. There was a very large pocket in this area. We know Russian forces have gotten gains in this area, but we didn't have enough video evidence. Today, however, in the city, I'm going to try and pronounce this. My pronunciation of Russian and Ukrainian is terrible. But Rehorodok, once again, I'm sorry for butchering that. But there was a railroad bridge just outside of this city, and as a Russian supply train was crossing it, it was destroyed. They blew the bridge, and this tells us that this area is in Russian hands enough to the point that they're bringing in trains for supply. So that is why we've shifted this front line, but the destruction itself of that railroad bridge limits Russia's capability of resupply its forces. So let's take a look. So as you can see here, the bridge is completely destroyed. You saw the explosion, they had a picture of that. But here's the train. Now, this is a very vital supply line for Russia. Russia is one of the few countries in the world that heavily relies on trains and their logistics in order to resupply their forces. It's a very 20th century method, but it is still a stable and viable method for transporting heavy equipment quickly across relatively short distances. Because when you're talking about Europe, it's not like when the United States was in Afghanistan or Iraq. They have to fly tanks and equipment from the United States clear over to the battle space. Russia just has to put them on a train car and ship them to the front lines, and they can drive from there. It's saying they have fuel, of course, which we know has been an issue in the past. But this also tells us that this area is in Russian hands, because they wouldn't want to be moving train supplies in this area if it wasn't. And so we did compensate for that. Severodonetsk, no news coming out of there today. Rubizhne, very similar. Rubizhne, we're still declaring as contested because there's not enough evidence yet to say it's in Russian control. As we move further south, we can see that the 503rd Marine Brigade is showing off a bunch of new toys. The usage of drones is becoming very prevalent in modern warfare between two modern militaries. We've seen drone usage heavily on both sides, both for spotting and for engagement. The Bayraktar TB2, the Switchblades now, the whatever that new one that they came up with is. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Same thing with the Orlan drones for surveillance. And now we're seeing that even quadcopters with some homemade devices, things that were similar ideas that were developed in Syria and the Middle East, are now being put into a much more purpose-built structure. And we see that here. The videos are slightly graphic, not extremely, but a little bit. So just understand that. But we aren't going to show any extensive gore here. So let's take a look. And so this is an infantry fighting vehicle. I'm turning the sound off because it has copywritten music, but you can see this looks like a BMD from the top, and looks like a BMD-4 actually, based off the rear vents. So you drop some munition, hits the target, and BMD armor is not very thick, so that probably did end up penetrating it. It probably has knocked out the vehicle, and it looks like it has. So Now they're dropping another one, puts it right on the turret, on the aft part of the turret, and that probably has knocked out that vehicle for good. This next video, we see, so there's a longer version of this video. I'm gonna cut it. This one cuts it short because it does kind of get a little bit explicit towards the end. But you can see these are Russian troops are getting inside of this vehicle, and there's a sunroof. This is why you don't have a sunroof in your car, and you don't leave it open in a war zone. So you can see they're helping each other climbing in there. I don't know if they're drunk or what's going on. But he drops it, and they drive backwards just in time for that round, just in time for that explosive to drop right into the sunroof. And from my understanding, there was at least 1 fatality and 2 wounded from the video footage later on, but I can't confirm. Same thing here, dropping it directly on Russian troops outside of this building. I don't know if they're looting it or if they're just using it as a forward operations center, but we can see they do have a couple vehicles out here, including a very poorly parked supply truck. You can see that munition there, and you can see them moving around down there. It's not a very large explosive, but they drop it and right in this group. And they all go clamoring. And I'm going to cut it off there because, once again, gore and what have you. And so we do know that they are effectively using this drone and these munitions. And it's very simple. It's very effective, but it's very simple. KISS method in the military and in engagements is probably the best thing you could do. Keep it simple, stupid. That's it. Because another saying is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Because if you try to make something overly complicated, and it's too hard to fix or what have you, or it's too complicated to be operated easily, then it only hinders operations. It doesn't make it effective. And that's why things like fire and forget rockets are a thing, because anybody can use a fire and forget rocket, a dumb rocket like the RPG or the AT-4. Anybody can use an AK. It's a very simple weapon, doesn't take a lot of training to shoot or maintain. Same thing with most basic infantry weapons, and now of course most drones. Very simple setup. You have a release mechanism. You have what looks like some of those 3D printed explosives they were working on earlier in the war. The plunger hits when it hits the ground, sets off the explosive. Small explosive charge makes it go boom. And it's a quadcopter, so anyone who's ever bought one off Amazon for $15 can fly it. Not something crazy. And if it's destroyed, it's not a major loss. As we move further south, there has been a lot of developments down and around Mariupol, and we're going to start off with a good one, and that's because we see some of the conditions inside the Azovstal again today, and we actually have the translation for the video. I'll read through it afterwards, but the thing is that morale is appearing very high, and looks like they're planning on holding out indefinitely. In fact, they're very hopeful that there's going to be a deblockade of the city. But the saying of making a lot out of a little could not be strung further than what has been done inside of Mariupol in the last 2 months. The limited supplies, the limited everything, food, water, safe places to be, so shelter, everything is in limited supply, and the Ukrainians have done an amazing job of stretching that out and making it as comfortable for the people there as possible. In fact, while the conditions aren't great, you can see there's nice bunk beds, they have mattresses and stuff inside of the Azovstal where the civilians were. That's good to see. A lot of people don't have that within the greater city of Mariupol. And so we're going to go ahead and watch this. So this is the Azovstal's MTV Cribs episode.
и всего прочего сделать вот такую классную комнату. Это реально очень максимально круто.
В общем, в самых дерьмовых условиях мы можем себе устроить комфортные условия для существования.
Абсолютно верно. Печка, кружка и антисептик. По-моему, это лучшее, что может быть в рационе, современном бойца Азова, который находится в тяжелых условиях. Ну, я думаю, что все...
Прошу заметить, оружие смазано, снаряга готова. В
Блин,
условиях мы готовы воевать.
это круто. Ну, мы верим в деблокаду, но пока ее нет, мы готовимся и будем сражаться.
Слава Украине!
Дверей.
So, despite everything going on, looks like they're in good spirits. Of course, they're very tired, they're very weary, but they're in good spirits. And the translation says, look at our awesome room that we made. Even in the shittiest conditions, we can make ourselves comfortable. Cooking, or absolutely correct. Cooking stove, cup, and antiseptic, in my opinion, the best stuff that can be part of the modern Azov ration kit. I like to note the guns are oiled and the ammunition is prepared. Regardless of our conditions, we are ready to fight. We believe in the deblockade, and until it happens, we will fight. Slava Ukraini. And so that is the translation. We had our in-house translator give that to us. So very, 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 very good. I'm happy to see they're in good spirits. However, as we move further into the occupied parts of the city, we see that an art museum was actually looted and destroyed. So this, from my understanding, the museum was, for the most part, already destroyed, but members of the DNR and the Russians all came in and they were looting famous works, including those of the 20th century painter Arkhip Kuinzi. I'm sorry, once again, my pronunciation is terrible, but they were a Mariupol native. And we can see that here. So there they are, showing off the artworks. So very beautiful painting. Very beautiful painting. But that is now those places are now being looted by Russian forces. And the DNR is also reportedly giving newborns in the city of Mariupol birth certificates. Now, the DNR is also known as the Donetsk People's Republic, or the DPR. They are not recognized by the international community outside of Belarus and Russia. And giving these birth certificates, according to the Ukrainian Parliament's Commissioner for Human Rights, Lyudmila Denisova, she has stated that issuing these documents actually goes against the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And this is coming out from Nexta TV. They're the ones initially reporting it. And this is what they're apparently being given. So, means that the DNR is essentially coming into this region. And they are putting in place what they need for a government and control. We saw this while the city was being taken, and now that the Azovstal and the Ukrainian forces are contained, they can go out in a wider area and start to implement a lot of the things they're planning on doing. That's not the only thing. If we come down here, they're actually demining the port of Mariupol. They're saying, the DNR is actually saying that they are going to have it up and running and be taking in shipments within the next couple of weeks. If that comes to fruition, we don't know, but here's a video of them actually going through and taking down the explosives that they are finding along this port. So, divers going into the water, of course, because there could be anti-ship mines that we've seen those wash up in places like Turkey before. So, it is still very dangerous. There's a lot of stuff still laying around. But there's a lot of work to be done. I don't know if they actually will have this port ready to use. A lot of that stuff's been destroyed. So, but they are starting to work on it. Now it's safe for them to do so. And there is also a press tour in Mariupol today. And journalists were requested to join Russian forces for a press tour inside of the city. However, no Western journalists showed up. The only people that were there were Russians, the Russian media, and a single Chinese journalist. That was it. That was the only press tour in Mariupol, which we've already seen most of these Russian journalists in Mariupol to begin with. So, basically no one showed up. We have a photo here of what's going on. And they're all giving statements and what have you, the usual thing. But it's essentially a propaganda campaign inside the city, which we've already seen before. But however, we do know that the shelling and the bombing of the Azovstal continues. We've seen fighting on the outskirts. We do know that Ukrainian forces are continuing to fight. And the Russian forces are not letting up their attacks on the Azovstal, despite saying that they were simply going to besiege it. And we saw Russian jets flying over the Azov Sea, which and these jets are more than likely flying back after having conducted a bombing mission over the Azovstal. So let's take a look here. So we can't confirm that they were, but it seems to be likely, considering we've seen massive amounts of artillery fire and bombing raids over the Azovstal. Because for the most part, the munitions that they can launch via artillery just aren't big enough to punch through most of the Azovstal. So they're having to drop things like bunker busters and large munitions, 3,000 kilogram bombs, 2,000 kilogram bombs, and those things they have to be carried by aircraft. You can't launch them from artillery guns. As we move south into Sevastopol, there was yet again a Russian submarine that was spotted reloading cruise missiles. So the strikes, such as on Kyiv, on Odessa, Lviv, that have occurred within the recent week and a half or so, all come after the Moskva, which is the main cruise missile carrier, or the main cruise missile cruiser in the Black Sea fleet. It is the flagship of the Black Sea fleet. Now that it's sunk and surface vessels are a lot more easy to engage for the Ukrainian forces with their anti-ship missiles, it seems that submarines in the Black Sea Fleet have taken over that role primarily for conducting those heavy precision, I say precision in quotations, cruise missile strikes across the country. And once again, the strikes that just happened yesterday on Kyiv, the fact that we're seeing them reloading their missiles today means that more than likely those Caliber cruise missiles actually came over the Black Sea. And we also know it wasn't just Kyiv. One actually failed here in Fastiv, which is kind of on that flight path from the Black Sea over to Kyiv. So very good likelihood that this could have been one of these submarines or the submarine to have fired those. Let's take a look here. And there it is, being reloaded. There, right in port. It's being loaded with Caliber cruise missiles, and here is actually them launching Caliber cruise missiles. So once again, very high likelihood, and they're resorting because they're capable of carrying cruise missiles and launching them, and they can pop up, fire these things, drop back down, and they're not going to be susceptible to anti-ship missiles from the Ukrainian side. And Ukraine no longer has a navy. They scuttled their own ships to ensure that they couldn't fall to the Russians. Because there was concerns here in Odessa of there being an amphibious landing. Now that the Moskva has been sunk, it's very, very, very unlikely that Russia could actually conduct an amphibious landing because their troop carriers and supply ships would essentially be completely exposed to any anti-ship missile fire, because the Moskva was going to be that ship to provide that air defense for them. So there's nothing to conduct naval gunfire support and nothing to conduct air defense support as well for their fleet. So that's pretty much off the table at this point. And that is it for inside of the country of Ukraine. However, there is a lot of developments outside of the country as well in regards to the war. And I'm actually going to go ahead and move. We're actually going to not start with Russia today, but we're going to go over here to The Hague. So this is something we found last minute. But here in The Hague, Ukraine has actually submitted evidence today in regards to the ongoing case against the Russian Federation for crimes against humanity, genocide, and of course those war crimes that were committed. And the amount of evidence is insane. This comes from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, their official Twitter. And there it is. That is a lot of evidence. That is a lot of files that they are submitting for this case. Understandably so. And this is going back for cases all the way back to 2014 with the annexation within Crimea, or the attempted annexation of Crimea, and then, of course, in the Donbass with the supporting of separatist forces there. But massive amounts of evidence being sent there. Here's one of the shipping labels for them. So, very, very interesting, very good. And from Slovakia as well. Slovakia is going to be giving Ukraine its fleet of MiG-29s. In fact, from our understanding, they're giving them all of their MiG-29s, or the vast majority of them, because Poland has agreed to volunteer to conduct air patrols over Slovakian airspace until the replacement jets arrive to Slovakia. They're getting replaced with F-16s in 2024. So for the next year and a half, essentially, Poland is going to be conducting those air patrols over Slovakian airspace because they don't have the jets to do it themselves, because they're all going to Ukraine. This is going to bolster the Ukrainian Air Force, which is in dire need of more aircraft. And so it's going to continue to kind of push that air supremacy into Ukraine's favor. The skies over Ukraine are still contested airspace. Even at this point, no side has established air superiority, and that is thanks to the anti-air batteries that Ukraine currently has, and the Manpad launchers that they have, the Stinger, the Starstreak, the Igla, the Strela, and the Ukrainian Air Force that is still flying sorties. We saw air-to-air combat just the other day here on the channel. So now, when we do move into Russia, however, the first thing we can see here is in Belgorod, and residents are reporting explosions. They're saying that the air defense systems are also detecting something incoming, and they're actually launching. Now, we've seen where it seems like they aren't launching at anything, but we can't confirm this, but this is what's being reported on social media. So, take a look here. So something happening in Belgorod. Don't know what, but something is happening. And that's what we're getting from our sources, that there's possibly explosions in the city, which isn't out of the isn't exactly out of the realm of possibilities. We've seen strikes on Belgorod before, as well as Bryansk. As we move up towards Moscow, we see photos of a zinc lead-lined coffin. And this has begun to circulate, and the belief currently is that this individual is likely to have been at the Chernobyl nuclear air exclusion zone. We do know that the Russians, when they took control of that area, actually dug defensive positions into the Red Forest, which is highly radioactive, and they pulled out of that area. And the rumors have been that a lot of them have gotten radiation poisoning. Some of them have died. Some of them are currently dying. But there's never been anything confirmed. This kind of confirms that. The likelihood is that his body's probably highly radioactive. And they got to put him inside of a lead-lined coffin, much like Madame Curie. So that is the likelihood, but we can't confirm. But we can't really think of any other reason why you would put someone inside of a lead-lined coffin. And nukes are taking the lead for the May 9th parade. Today, rehearsals occurred for the May 9th parade, and the nuclear arsenal was put front and center. They are leading the parade. This is probably just a show of force, not just for the Russian people, that they're strong, they have this nuclear arsenal, that portrayal of the May 9th parade and Russian strength in its military, but also a signal to the West of, we still have a nuclear arsenal we can still use against you, we can retaliate, which goes along with a lot of the rhetoric both the government has said and also Russian state media, which is becoming seemingly more and more unhinged with their rhetoric. Now, we've shown some of it here. There's a lot of, if it happens, it happens. If World War III starts, the probability is getting higher. This could be just saber rattling. The state media, it's state media because it is Russian government controlled. They took out basically every other independent news network in the nation. So, but let's take a look at this. Now, the fact that they could find any vehicles to put in this parade besides nuclear arsenal weapons is a miracle in and of itself, considering most of it has been captured and then used against them in Ukraine. Interesting statistics actually now suggest that Ukraine is fielding more tanks and armor than the Russian Federation is in the Battle of the Donbass. So the fact that they have anything for this parade in and of itself is interesting, but they're still going to have that May 9th parade, and they've even announced that they are planning on having one in Mariupol as well. As we move further into Russia, however, over here in Kurgan, a pharmaceutical plant had an explosion occur. It's actually the largest antibiotics plant in Russia, and apparently one person has been injured. The Russian state media are saying that there is currently they are opening a criminal case against it as a result of a clap. And clap is basically the word that Russian state media use to say explosion. This is because the word explosion, while not forbidden like war is, they have to call it a special military operation. The word explosion is avoided like the plague in Russian media, from my understanding. So you can actually take a look at that here. And this is coming from Russian state media. And they said the investigative department is investigating community of Kurgan region, opened a criminal case, and the fact that the worker was injured as a result of cotton at the pharmaceutical plant in Sintez. Now, cotton, it's because most things don't translate very well. Google Translate is a very interesting thing, which is why we have our in-house translator who actually translated that for us. Once again, we can see this on Russian state media sources again, and this one is in English. It's from Pravda. So, very interesting development. Very interesting development indeed. Down here in Istanbul, 3 dead and 9 people were injured as a result of an explosion at a paint factory. The cause of the explosion is unknown. However, there is currently an investigation underway to determine the cause.
Şu anda ateş baksana şey yapıyor, uçuyor.
Evet, bizim şeye yakın çok.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you don't stand next to a window when a big explosion happens. And once again, over in Russia, the FSB detained an Islamic State militant reportedly. When he was detained, they found an IED components, and reportedly this individual was planning attacks on local authorities and law enforcement. So we do have a video here of that as well. So, bag over the head and in the van he goes. And for more interesting developments, now, there's been a lot of talk about Ukraine joining the EU, but Georgia has said that it completed its EU questionnaire as well, and they are planning on turning this in on May the 2nd, which is this upcoming Monday. And so, very interesting, very great piece of news. I did not know that Georgia was actually planning on joining the European Union. Georgia also has a history regarding Russian conflict. Russia invaded the nation of Georgia in 2008. And this is where a lot of their mistakes in their military capabilities actually came to light. Communication bogged down, logistical bogged down, chain of commands, structure issues. Similar issues to what we saw in Ukraine. They reportedly had fixed, and then now they're popping up again. So, they're very similar issues, but I'm glad to see that Georgia is also planning on joining the European Union. I think it's a good step for them. And as we move into the Middle East today, a couple of different things are happening. First of all, the Turkish forces have completed phase 1 of their operation. So, Claw Castle, which is their operation within northern Iraq, specifically Iraqi Kurdistan, against the PKK. The PKK are Kurdish fighters. They are a Marxist group. They actually had divisions of the PKK within Turkey, and Turkey considers them a terrorist organization. It's one of the reasons why Turkey invaded Syria back in 2019. And they did this because PKK, they were concerned about the PKK along their border as well as the ongoing war, because the SDF is primarily also a Kurdish force. And that's why the U.S. had to pull out, because the U.S. was with the Kurds, embedded with the Kurds. Turkey's coming in to fight the Kurds, and then you would possibly have 2 NATO countries attacking each other, and that is not good. So, similar issue is happening up here in northern Iraq against the PKK. They've located more than 80 different safe houses and caches, weapons caches, communications equipment, firearms, IEDs. They've conducted airstrikes. They've conducted raids with their special operations forces. So a lot of things happening there in northern Iraq, but that phase 1 is reportedly now complete. And in Mosul today, a car bomb injured Iraqi troops. Now, we don't know the number, but several Iraqi troops were injured after a car bomb detonated while they were gathering at an unspecified location along one of the banks here. I believe along the eastern bank of this river, the Tigris. And they were injured. There's no other information regarding this incident. With a lot of these strikes, there just isn't a lot of information coming out. With this, it's been a very long, drawn-out, ongoing thing that they've had to deal with, and unless it's pretty in your face, there just isn't a lot of news coming out of the region. It just doesn't make it anymore. People have kind of moved on with their lives and just kind of live with it now, which is very sad. And in Mazir-i-Sharif, which is part of northern Afghanistan, the Islamic State actually claims the bombings of mazir-i-sharif. Yesterday, they ended up using a bus packed with explosives. They detonated it in a couple of Shiite neighborhoods there, which left more than 30 people killed and or injured. And so we do have them here claiming responsibility for that attack. So the Islamic State has been conducting a lot of operations in this area. They fired rockets into Uzbekistan. They have conducted multiple terror attacks here in Mazir-i-Sharif and against Shiite shrines and Shiite neighborhoods, and as well as within Kabul, and that continues to be an ongoing issue within the nation. Similar, however, is also the fact that explosions happened in a mosque in Kabul today. Inside the Sufi mosque of Khalif Sahib. The reportedly 11 to 21 people were killed and about 50 were injured as a result of the explosion. The IED was planted inside the building. And so this happened during right after the Friday prayers. So they do, from my understanding, Muslims do pray, I believe, up to 5 times a day, starting with the morning at Han, which happens either right before or about dawn. Very beautiful if you've ever listened to it and ever get to hear it in person. Very, very beautiful. I've been able to listen to it quite a few times in my life in person, and but this is kind of a nice calm period of time, and when it's disrupted in this kind of a manner, a very violent manner, it's very concerning. And no one has specifically claimed responsibility for this attack either. We do have a video here. And so, as we move forward on to Mali, you see the Al Qaeda an Al Qaeda linked terror organization called the Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wa Muslimin claimed responsibility for a series of attacks which actually occurred on the 24th. We reported on these previously. They ended up in the result. They resulted with the death of 6 servicemen, and another 16 were wounded. Several pieces of military equipment, including an Mi-35M helicopter, was actually damaged or destroyed. 11 of the insurgents were killed in the attacks. This is something that we didn't know if it was a false flag operation, because Wagner forces, the Russian mercenary group, were also spotted in the area about the same time. And this is finally, there is a group coming out and claiming the attacks. So we know that the Wagner, from our understanding, aren't involved in that, but still, it's nice to finally have some confirmation to be able to follow up with some of these incidents going on. And as we move further in, we actually jump over here into North America, specifically Washington. And that's because the Lend-Lease Act is now active. So it was something that that Congress actually passed yesterday. It's not a new Lend-Lease Act. It's actually an amendment to the Lend-Lease Act, which is the Resolution 1776, which was signed into law by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1941. And this was originally used during World War II to supply the Allied nations, including the United Kingdom, France, the Soviet Union, with arms, weapons, ammunition, raw materials, steel, iron, copper, oil, fuel. All of that was able to be supplied, and it was supplied at a 90% discount at the time. And now this is allowing for an even more streamlined flow and more frequent shipments of aid to Ukraine to support the war effort. And they're already reporting that effort has already intensified. So it says a new supply of weapons to Ukraine will include howitzers and UAVs. The batch will be delivered within 24 hours by 12 different aircraft. So this stuff is getting flown in at an incredible pace. And that's not the only thing. The Pentagon actually said today, with John Kirby being the spokesman, stated that the Florida National Guard, their troops are actually training Ukrainian forces in Germany. And the reason they're training them is so that way they know how to properly utilize NATO equipment. This goes back to the conversation we were having earlier, where really Ukraine is transitioning away from Soviet arms. They're now becoming a more and more NATO-equipped country. And this includes the M777 155mm howitzer. So Soviet arms are 152 millimeters. NATO standard is 155. This includes vehicles, the Humvees, MRAPs, Bearcats, everything else that's getting supplied to them. This includes, their radar systems, their anti-air systems, the Javelins, the Stingers, the Starstreaks. All of this stuff is NATO equipment. Of course, the little hunter-killer drones, those Switchblades. Likewise, so they're being trained. We know at least 50 Ukrainian troops are being trained to use the M777 howitzer. And so I'm sure more are also there for training for other things. That way that information can be disseminated. And there it is from defense.gov. So we can get that information if we really wanted to. Let's jump over here. This is coming straight from the Pentagon, folks. But we pulled it up there in the tweet. And so that's it for North America, but we're actually going to jump over to Europe for our last piece because we always want to end on a good or interesting note. And today, the Large Hadron Collider is breaking its own records. So there was about a 3-year time frame in which the particle accelerator was not up and running. This is part of COVID and other things that were going on, but it basically consists of a 17-mile long ring of superconducting magnets. This can accelerate things and smash protons and ions together at ridiculous speeds and generate ridiculous amounts of force. And what this does, it actually allows for them to create things like miniature black holes, dark matter, antimatter, things inside of that they may only last for very small fractions of a second, but it gives us a much better understanding of how the universe actually works. This is where a lot of theories are coming together. They're testing these things. And this stuff is getting, once I said, it's accelerating to almost the speed of light. So from my understanding, this is actually the closest to the speed of light that humans can actually physically get near to. And so in the last within 3 days of opening at this point, 2 beams of protons were accelerated to they generate a record energy of 6.8 trillion electron volts per beam. And so in 2015, the energy levels actually reached 6.5 trillion electron volts per beam. So this is going to be very interesting. The new record is planning on topping out at an energy volt of 13.6 trillion. So that's very cool. It's very cool to see that kind of stuff. And we're getting this stuff, of course, from Life Science. But that is the Hadron Collider, for those that have never seen it. It is an underground facility. It's a very secure facility. I don't think this is something that you would necessarily want people to mess with. There's a couple of Hadron Colliders. There's one, I believe, in the United States. I believe there's also one down here in southern Australia. But this one here is right here on the border between Switzerland and France. It's actually just outside Geneva. Is actually the largest in the world. And so that is where a lot of people are dreaming about the experiments that they could get conducted there to see if their theories actually work, if these theories are plausible, because at this point, no one really knows. But much like the Hadron Collider is teaching us a lot about our own universe, the stuff that has been happening inside of Ukraine and other parts of the world are teaching us about the capabilities of human beings and their compassion. And that is why on every single video that we ever will do, we'll never have super chats on these streams. So check out in the description below, because until we get large enough to be monetized, we have to put everything in the description. But we have a bunch of different links for vetted and trustworthy sites that you can go and donate money to humanitarian efforts for Ukraine, for the Horn of Africa, both Ethiopia and Somalia, in Southeast Asia. And also, if you want to support the war effort directly for Ukraine, Come Back Alive is an organization there. They've been operating since 2014, and they supply weapons and equipment such as body armor to Ukrainian troops. So you can go and check them out. Their links down there as well. And so that wraps up the news for the night. If you want to join us on our community Discord, we do have one. The link is also in the description. And with those donation links, if you can't give a lot, give a little. Literally everything helps. Those organizations were vetted because we know that the money is going to go where it needs to go. And also because the majority of the money doesn't go to those administration costs. In fact, some of those go upwards of 99.6% of all of the money donated goes to their programs. So, and if you can't give anything at all, I completely understand. Trust me, I'm not rich either. But please give us a like and subscribe, because we don't want to be the biggest thing on YouTube, but we do want to be big enough that we can do a lot of good in this world. And we want to be able to reach more people, to give them unbiased news, and there's not going to be any political theater or discussion here. It's just going to be straight. This is the news. This is what's going on. If we have a bias, we're going to very clearly state that, as we have regarding Ukraine. And so I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope that your family and friends are safe. I hope that you continue to be safe as well. I hope that this war doesn't drag on any longer, because there's enough suffering going on in the world. And I hope you have a great weekend. I hope, I also hope that you'll be joining us tomorrow for our next stream. So with that, my name is Paul from the New News, and I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Talk to you later. Bye.